to that about all Jamaicans. And just along with the analogy of increased volumes, a good indicator of our economic activity is trade. And imports declined by 26% or $1.7 billion US dollars in 2020. As imports declined, so did tax revenues, customs duty, GCT. Madam Speaker, imports grew by 25% or $1.2 billion in 2021 versus 2020. Now, when imports grow by 1.2 billion US dollars, 25% in a single year, what do you think is going to happen to revenues? Tax revenues associated with imports grow. And to provide concrete examples, Madam Speaker, just 4 examples of goods. Ceramic imports were up 60% in 2022 as compared to 2020, and up 25% compared to 2019. Paper was up by 45%, and this is net weight, this is not dollars, up by 45% in 2022 as compared with compared to 2020, and 17% over 2019. Glass and glassware was up 54% in 2022 compared to 2020, and 50% up over 2019. Aluminum imports were up by 35% in 2022. Iron and steel imports were up by 17% in 2022 compared to 2020. Dairy and eggs up 35% in 2022 compared to 2020. So when you have those volume increases, you're going to get additional revenue. Now, as I was saying, to me, one of the most unfortunate examples is to say to the Jamaican people that all the tax revenue that government gets, you pay all of it. Yeah. Nothing could be further from the truth, Madam Speaker. We have 3 million stopover tourists who visit Jamaica, who are projected to visit Jamaica in 2022. In 2020, we had 880,000. In 2021, 1.5 million. And in 2022, 3 million. Now, when you go from 880,000 visitors to 1.5 million visitors to 3 million visitors in such a short space of time, at our guest houses and villas and hotels, what do you think happens to revenues? It goes up, Madam Speaker. Tourists consumes in the hotel and out of the hotel, and these transactions, either directly or indirectly, generate revenue for the government. Now, so revenue, Madam Speaker, is not all from Jamaican residents. Now, the easiest example to show it is just to look at travel tax receipts, which declined $75 billion to $5.4 billion in 2020-21. And it is expected to go from $5 billion in 2020-21 to $28 billion in 23-24. No, it was $21 billion before the pandemic. But I'm saying, from the lows of 2020, that Mr. Golding doesn't want to tell you about, we have tax revenues, not one, well, very little of it, or a minority of it paid by Jamaicans, going up by 431% from $5 billion to $28.7 billion. And, Madam Speaker, now, there was a part, Madam Speaker, where he spoke about tax revenues as a percentage of GDP, going from 24.4 in 2015-16, projected to 28.2 as a percentage of GDP. And the explanation for this is more of a technical nature. It's clearly not due to the tax rates that are being implied. But, Madam Speaker, when you look at tax expenditures, and every year in the budget documents, we produce a tax expenditure statement, not something that's often commented on or read. And a tax expenditure is essentially any potential revenue loss occurring as a result of specific provisions that lead to a reduction of tax payable by a specific taxpayer activity. When you adjust for tax expenditures, Madam Speaker, I have a table up here, and you add back the lost revenue due to waivers and other things, if you could show it, what you see, Madam Speaker, is that tax revenue as a percentage of GDP is far more stable. Oh, you may not be there. Where instead of going from 24.4, with tax expenditures in 15-16 was 3.9%, which means total tax as a percentage of GDP was 28.3. And you compare it with 21-22, where tax as a percentage of GDP rose to 26.5, but you add the tax expenditure, which was lower at 2.5 points, and you get 29. I'll distribute that chart separately because it's not available here. But there are sectors in our economy, Madam Speaker, that have more tax expenditures than others. And occasionally, the economy goes through, a rotation of, caused by external forces and factors outside of our control. And depending on the sectors that are, depending on the relative contribution and weights to GDP, if tax expenditures are a big feature of that particular sector, it can impact the tax revenues as a proportion of GDP. I need more to be able to delve into more detail on that point, and this may not be the forum to do so, but suffice to say that the reduction in tax expenditure over the period 2015-16 to 21-22 on account of better and tighter tax administration has, accounts for some of that observation. In addition to the fact, Madam Speaker, that transfer pricing has played a role in yields, as well as the Assecuda system at customs, allowing for cross-references. PAYE payrolls can be interrogated now and cross-referenced to determine if an employee has benefited twice from the threshold. There are a number of more lawyers working in compliance, Madam Speaker, and the efficiency of the GCT net and collection, Madam Speaker, is a lot higher. So, Madam Speaker, he also made reference to how the policy approach that we chose to protect the vulnerable as prices rose last year. And this House will recall that we launched a $7 billion social intervention program. I won't go through all the details here, but the $2 billion energy copay, where the persons who consume at the lowest ends of the energy consumption ladder benefited from a 20% copay, in addition to persons who were on prepaid electricity, and this benefited 470,000 households, Madam Speaker, in the months of April, May, June, and July of last year. We also had implemented a one-off back-to-school grants of $1.8 billion, and pensioners who were at the lower end of the spectrum benefited from $550 million, as well as non-path beneficiaries, another $550 million. Now, the thing about it, Madam Speaker, if we implemented the way the opposition would have wanted us to, which is to reduce the headline prices, the NIS pensioner who is on $14,000 or $10,000 a month would not benefit from that. The social pensioner would be unlikely to benefit from that. The persons who consume, who live in one room, have a fan, a radio, a television, a little refrigerator, maybe a room and a half, Madam Speaker, they most likely would not be able to benefit from that. We intervene directly to assist those who are at the bottom of the consumption ladder. So, Madam Speaker, it is necessary to respond to especially misleading claims, and I have spent some time in doing so with the most misleading claim in the budget presentation, debate so far. Madam Speaker, the government is focused on maintaining, preserving, protecting, increasing, and sharing the gains of economic reform and economic recovery. And this is something, Madam Speaker, that we will continue to do. We are focused, Madam Speaker. We believe, Madam Speaker, that we share what is produced. We believe that if we share what is not there, we won't have much to share the next day, Madam Speaker. And we are absolutely focused on making sure that those who are at the bottom are protected, Madam Speaker. And that is why the minimum wage would have been increased by 44% by the Prime Minister. That is why, Madam Speaker, contract workers, we're going to find permanent employment for them. That is why the NIS rate, Madam Speaker, NIS pensions are going up by 74%. And that is why, Madam Speaker, we are ensuring that we have scholarships for persons who want to be exposed to higher value-added areas or jobs and who can qualify to get into UTech. We provide in full tuition and scholarship for them. We are absolutely focused, Madam Speaker. It is a vision of this administration built on Labour, Madam Speaker, that rose out of the bowels of the Labour Labour riots, or after the Labour riots, Madam Speaker, in 1944, founded on a foundation, Madam Speaker, of support for all Jamaicans, but particularly those who are in vulnerable positions and for whom government support can make the most difference. That is our focus, and a focus for which we don't shy away from, Madam Speaker. That is why, even in our compensation reform, we made sure that persons who were close to minimum wage, drivers, Madam Speaker, the salary scale for drivers, Madam Speaker, went up by over 70%, Madam Speaker, to make sure that drivers and office attendants and persons at the bottom of the scale in the public sector were able to have a living wage. There's a time that the public sector would be characterized as the highest or the largest employer of minimum wage in Jamaica, Madam Speaker. I want to say to you right here that under this government, that is no longer the case. And that's even with minimum wage at the elevated levels. The scales in government are a bit up from where minimum wage is. And that, Madam Speaker, doesn't happen by accident. That happens through planning and having a disposition, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we meet our targets. Because it's the targets that give us credibility. But when the credibility delivers return, we turn around and share those returns with the people of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, this has been a good debate process, lasting over 2 weeks, with interesting presentations. And Madam Speaker, there's a lot of work that has been announced in these budget presentations. A lot of work to be done. And we want to be able to stand here in a future debate, and not only and to be able to speak about some of the things that we announced as implemented. And to do so, Madam Speaker, we're going to have to move with alacrity as the new year begins to put, Madam Speaker, the fire behind the engine, or in the engine, to ensure that all of these plans and programs and policies and projects are implemented within budget and on time, so that we can continue to deliver for the people of Jamaica who sent us here. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and may God bless Jamaica and bless all Jamaicans. Yeah, just come back for it. I'm going to give you the stuff. You take it. All right.
Have to move for the bill to be read a second.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the bill to be read a second time.
Members, the question before the House is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2024 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament. Read a second time.
Members, the House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Members, I put clause 1. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I put clause 2. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I put clause 3. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I put the schedule, sections 2 and 3. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill to the House as having passed without amendments. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Members of the House, I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without any amendments. Minister. I now ask Minister of Finance.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a third time.
The question is that the bill be read a third time.
Those in favor?
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2024 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament read a third time and passed.
Members, House Leader, I want.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business for today. Permit me, Madam Speaker, to, on the motion of adjournment, to really congratulate the Honourable Minister of Finance for the sterling work he has done and the tremendous performance he has put in today and the wonderful presentation overall that he's made to this budget debate. I therefore ask, Madam Speaker, that the House be adjourned until Tuesday, March 28 at 2 p.m. at the George William Gordon House. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, just before we adjourn, I think it is important this afternoon that I shed some light on what took place in Parliament this evening, which was occasioned by the behavior of one of our members of Parliament from South West St. Andrew. And in doing so, I want, first of all, to bring to the attention of this House and the public the standing orders that guide what takes place in this House. I want to refer, first of all, to Section 42, which says that the Speaker or the Chairman in any committee meeting shall be heard in silence so that any speaker may be heard without interruption. 43 goes on to say that the speaker may direct that the member discontinue the speech and resume his speech, his or her speech. I have asked Hansard, and I'm waiting on the exact words of the member when the member asked to raise a point of order. My attention was directed to her, and I'm waiting for her to raise a point of order. And then I immediately heard an outburst, which to my mind was unparliamentary. And I directed that she take her seat or withdraw the comment before being allowed to make the point of order. I'm still waiting on the words from Hansard. I do not wish to paraphrase what she said, but she said words that indicated that she was not going to do as a speaker directs. I'm waiting on her direct words. And this is not to say that a ruling of any speaker cannot be challenged. The ruling of a speaker can be challenged, but there is a parliamentary way to do that. If you object to the ruling given by the chair, then you raise a procedural motion dissenting from the chair's ruling immediately, and thereafter it is seconded by someone else. You do not stand and shout at the speaker and indicate that you are not going to do as it is, which is what took place in this parliament. And I have always, and in fact, the speaker, the Minister of Finance, sat and allowed for her to make the point of order, and I allowed her to go ahead. And what the member was asking me to do was to rule on something I never heard. All I heard was when she said a point of order, and I turned to her and she stood and I was waiting, and then I heard the outburst. Madam Clarke, is the printed word of the member from Southwest here from Hansard? I've asked for it for quite some while now, and I do think that it is important that all members understand what it is that the member said. There is no ruling that was made that was against any member. Another member of the opposition tried to talk about a rift. I do not have, as the speaker, a rift with any member of the opposition. In fact, I enjoy with most members a very good relationship, including the member from Southwest St. Anne. But it cannot be good parliamentary behavior for me to direct. She is allowed to make a point in the middle, and for her to indicate that she will not abide by the ruling of this chair. She's from St. Andrew Southwest, and I do have a good relationship with her. There was nothing, but I do believe, and I still so hold, that the behavior is unparliamentary. And that is what it is. Madam Clarke, can you say whether Hansard had the exact words? Can I just find out?
Two officers up there waiting, madam.
I really do think it is important, because immediately Jamaicans will have the wrong impression. This parliament is a parliament that allows every member of parliament to express his or her views. And in fact, I allowed another member of the opposition to speak on the very matter, notwithstanding we were breaking the Minister of Finance closing speech, because I think it is important. But I think it is equally important that we know what the standing orders is, and that as a parliament, the Prime Minister's asked for our behavior to be in conformity with a good example to the population. And therefore, it is important that whenever anybody speaks about what took place here this evening, they understand why I made the ruling. And indeed, you know, if the members, all the member had to do, if she wanted to continue with the point of order, is to withdraw her comment and continue, because I was not stopping her. And if I ruled, there's a parliamentary way for her to dissent to the ruling of the chair. I was waiting for her exact words, because I want it to be made absolutely clear that every member is entitled to their views in this House, as long as it is done in a parliamentary fashion. And it is very easy for people to get the wrong impression when something takes place. And it is for that reason that I'm asking for the exact words of the member. I crave your indulgence because I think it's important. Members, it seems that we are not able to get the exact wording from Hansard at this particular time. I've waited.
Madam Speaker.
Yes.
You know, years ago, there was a similar incident in this House. What I find is that speakers over the years are very lenient with members who disrespect the Speaker. I remember in 1981, I think it was, Tony Spalding got up, did the same thing to Speaker from Talbot Forest. And all he did was a call on the House Leader to name that member. It happened again with Peter Bunting, who was gross disrespectful to Speaker Charles. And I kept on calling to the Speaker, stand in order. I don't remember what number it is now, to name the member. And all the Speaker has to do is just call on the House Leader to name that member. And that behavior is totally outrageous. To say I will not abide by your ruling as you dictate. I think we need to go back to those days when we instill discipline in this House, when the Speaker calls on the House Leader to name a member. What does that mean for members, new members? When you ask to name a member, it's not for debate. It is whether or not that member is going to be suspended or expelled, depending on the penalty that is called for by the House Leader. And I think we need to go back to that, where we start to have discipline in this House. And when the Speaker speaks, and I notice member getting up and standing when the Speaker is speaking. It happened this afternoon. Never supposed to happen, never used to happen. And Madam Speaker, I'm imploring the chair. I'm imploring the chair to go back to the days when he got to standing order and calling the House Leader to name a member. Then he decided, determined by the House Leader, how long that person will be suspended for or whether the person will be expelled. I'm imploring you, Madam Speaker, to look at it. And the leniency you extend, sometimes withdraw it, because it's been abused by members.
Thank you very much, member. You have echoed my own sentiments on the matter, and that is why I was awaiting the exact words. I will make a ruling when I receive it. I will not, I gather it will be another 6 minutes before the ruling comes, so I'm going to adjourn. I will come back to the matter next week, where I will read the exact words used by the member this afternoon. On that, the question before the House is that this House do adjourn until, House Leader, until next week, Tuesday, the 28th of March. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.